Government policy helps to set the stage and make change possible in systems. We're banging our heads against the wall trying to get some financing or funding or change policies to actually get projects across the finish line, whether we were trying to grow food in Toronto on the rooftop or integrate food into the supply chains of a hospital so that people that are sick would be able to get access to healthy local food.
Hi, welcome to our podcast, The Zero Hunger Project. I'm your host, Suman, and today, unfortunately, we don't have Stacia with us as she is somewhere nice and warm. I will be today actually doing a different format than our regular podcast. We are going to leave our studio and we're going to go to our nation's capital in Ottawa. And we are going to speak to one of the member of parliaments who I've known for quite a few years now. There are not a whole lot of member of parliaments who passionately in Canada passionately understands food security. There are few, and this member of parliament is one of them. He's none other than the member of parliament from Whitby, Ontario, Ryan Turnbull. Just to read a little bit about Ryan's bio, I don't think this does full justice to who he is, but I'm going to read it out. Ryan Turnbull is the Member of Parliament from Whitby, Ontario, representing the Liberal Party since 2019. Before entering politics, Ryan spent over 20 years working in social innovation and sustainable development, founding a consulting firm that helped communities, organizations design solutions to complex issues like poverty, food insecurity, and climate change. His work focused on creating lasting social impact through collaboration and system changes. In Parliament, Ryan has been strong advocate for inclusive and sustainable growth, supporting policies that reduce inequalities and strengthen local economies. As Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue, he continues to promote equitable access to resources and opportunities for all Canadians. Ryan's commitment to community driven change reflects his belief that tackling issues like hunger requires both grassroots action and smart, compassionate policy. So now let's go to Ottawa and chat with Ryan. Hi, now we are in Ottawa and we are here in the office of our Member of Parliament from Whitby, Ryan Turnbull. So we have heard a little bit about Ryan and his passion and what he has done and he is up to. So we are going to straight dive into some of the questions, Ryan.
Sounds good.
Thank
Great
you
to be
for
here.
giving us your time.
Yeah, great to be here with you.
Amazing. So, Ryan, your career has focused on social innovation, systems change. How can these approaches help tackle hunger and food insecurity currently in Canada?
Well, one of the things about social innovation that I always loved was the co-design process. So the idea that we have to work collectively on systems, big problems that require systemic change. And I would say hunger and food insecurity in Canada is one of those types of problems where we see a highly complex food system, which has many levers and many actors and it's a complex system, right? Right from growing food to getting it to people's plates to even the skills needed. We call food literacy, as you know. All of these things are part of the complex food system that we have. And so social innovation allows us to look at that problem collectively, to understand it from different perspectives, and then to co-design solutions that can intervene in that system in a way that's both innovative, probably engages all sectors to work together, which is another key aspect of what social innovation has to offer. So I think that, when you look at a complex problem, that's really the only way to truly move the needle on something that's sort of embedded in a system is to think about the system and understand it, and have actors in the system at different levels that are willing to work together to coordinate their efforts. And if you don't have that, you often don't see much change on that issue. Yeah.
So, Ryan, you've been as a part of the government for quite a little while now.
6 years.
6 years. Yeah. Wow. Time flies.
It does.
When you're having fun, I say.
Yeah, that's right. I've been having a lot of fun.
Exactly. So, what do you think is the government's role in having a better food secure? And I ask this question not only from Canada's perspective within the country, but also in the global space, especially with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, so the government has a very important role. It's one of the things that brought me into the policymaking process and putting my name on a ballot. The appeal was really to get involved in an intimate way, the policymaking process. And the realization for me was that we were never going to have a just, sustainable, resilient food system, really, unless we had policymakers that I think bring some new perspective to the process, but also realize that policy is really the enabling factor to enable change across the country. So there's many examples of government policies that have made a difference. Obviously, the National School Food Program, which we fought for years. I was one of the strong advocates for getting a federal investment finally. Yeah. So that's great to see. Now we're making that permanent. But even before that, just having Canada's first ever national food policy, I engaged in that process,
100%.
which was so important to hear from people across the country. So, I mean, my main thing is that government policy helps to set the stage and make change possible in systems. Because in some cases, if the policies don't change, and I found this very frustrating being a social innovation person, coming up with these really creative solutions and then feeling like we were banging our heads against the wall trying to get, some financing or funding or change policies to actually get projects across the finish line, whether we were trying to grow food in Toronto on the rooftop or integrate food into the supply chains of a hospital so that people that are sick in a hospital trying to recover would be able to get access to healthy local food. There are many, many examples that I could give that showcase just how important policy became as the key enabler or inhibitor of progress.
That's amazing. And I'm going to dig in a little bit of something you said, because this is close to my heart as well, is the school food.
Yes.
And I know you've been a huge part of that conversation as we led to last year, we had it temporary for 5 years.
Yeah.
And this year we are planning to get it permanent.
Making it permanent.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
It is.
And we were the last G7 to actually do it.
That's right.
But in the last little while, when I've been traveling around the world quite a bit, and many countries do not have that.
Yes.
And what do you, and with your experience in the process in Canada, what message do you think you can help other NGOs who are in different parts of the world where there is no school food and they're trying to convince the government that this is a great idea?
Yes.
What is that message that you think that can help them?
Well, I mean, the thing for us is what made it successful was having a strong coalition, right? We have the Healthy School Food Coalition, which is a subset of or a network within Food Secure Canada. There are other partners across the country that all have come together under that one umbrella to play a key role. And I always say that, you need internal champions. You need people in government that are willing to push the agenda forward, but you also need a strong coalition outside of government. So my message to people internationally is, number one, don't give up. It took us, there are people in Canada who spent 30 to 35 or more years, like Debbie Field and many others we could probably name. Debbie's the one that always comes to mind because she spent so many years at Food Share Toronto and helped found Food Secure Canada. But there's so many others that have championed that work across Canada. So you needed both elements. And I think the key is, to draw people together under one kind of vision. Don't, our former prime minister used to say, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, sort
I
of,
love that.
which is always a good expression for don't get stuck on the fact that many of us will have a slightly different perspective on how to implement a national school food program. In Canada, obviously, it's highly complex. Every jurisdiction has a slightly different way to deliver that program and different partners and a different delivery model, all of which is fine. The key is to focus on the big pillars of what people agree on, and to define those, and then to really coalesce together in terms of advocacy. And that advocacy can be just engaging federal or national level, state level politicians, highlighting the needs in communities, really elevating the voices across every community. That was always key for us, is to have every MP receive letters and be educated on, just how much a school food program and the funding for it would contribute or does contribute to having a healthy start for young kids. I mean, one interesting thing when I was on the board of Food Secure Canada before I got into federal politics, we did a study at one point of all the issues in the food system and tried to isolate which one was the most popular or most likely to get support. And school food was the one that was by far the most popular. And the reason for that was everybody believes in feeding children.
Of course.
Who on this planet doesn't believe in feeding children? Like, it is just intuitive, it's innate. So certainly in any parent out there.
Of course.
I'm a parent of soon to be 3.
Congratulations!
Is on her way in the new year. But for me, that innate desire to feed children, and obviously the flip side of that is seeing them go hungry is really tugs at the heartstrings.
100%.
So there was a very emotional response that people would have to this particular issue. And that was one of the things that made it an issue to really continue to double down on advocacy efforts and really push forward.
So when you said you did the survey to see what takes, is it with the current member of parliaments or with the community?
It was with Canadians in general. Yeah, so it was, really sort of gauging, what got the most response from not just politicians, but from the general public. Because politicians, as you know, are always tethered to public opinion. So, the idea here was that there was a number of top issues that floated to the top based on what Canadians really could connect with. And I think school food or feeding children was one of the top ones. It was actually the top one.
That's amazing. I did not know that, actually. That's something. I have been involved with this from Prime Minister Paul Martin days. And it's been, 20 years, 22, 21 years.
Yeah.
And this has been something on the agenda. And we see that. I was just in Africa a few weeks ago, and this small organization is trying to get food in the schools just on its own. The government they don't have the support or funding from the government. It's a small country. The reason being because their enrollment in schools are so low currently. The parents are from a very low socioeconomic background. And the minute they added a little bit of food, now the enrollment went up because the parents they know that the kids are going to be fed at least one meal. So it's sad.
It is sad.
But that is the way they work is, okay, now since they are coming, let's talk education.
Yeah, so food becomes I remember my good friend Wayne Roberts, who I know you knew well and loved Wayne Roberts. Unfortunately, he passed, but what an inspiration he was, and he always talked about how food is sort of a gateway into policy conversations can actually be had through food. In your example there, it's almost like the food becomes an enabler for kids to actually go and be engaged in school and be educated. So, and there's many other examples of how food serves. And food, I mean, if you think about food being our connection to, the environment being our daily connection to nutrition, just how much it gives us and how it's always been a sort of a totem, a sort of a symbol of societies. It really is. And I don't want to instrumentalize it, but it is a tool, right? In
100%.
many respects. It's a sort of a sacred medicine is probably how lots of people would prefer to talk about it, which I agree with. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, um, stepping out of the school food part of it a little bit,
Sure.
one of the hats you wear, it's in the finance committee currently.
Yep.
With everything that's going on in the world and everything that's going on in Canada, where do you, and you did a massive tour around the country very recently, speaking to communities about what the communities are saying about finances and financial and before the budget stage.
Yep.
Now, what do you hear from people like regarding food security? Is that in the agenda for the community at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we heard lots of things. So it was a pre-budget consultation for the federal budget 2025. It was a great privilege to travel across the country and hear from so many different people, from mayors to business owners to community organizations to housing providers and developers. And, the list was very long. We heard about the rising cost of living challenges for sure, one of which was, and I think we saw statistics just yesterday, just like food prices and food affordability is on people's minds, as well as housing and all of the other various costs that people incur on a monthly basis, and they have to make their household budgets work. And those are the issues that are floating to the top today in the general public in Canada. Obviously, people are concerned about the economy, jobs, but it all relates to affordability, right? It all relates to this sense of, can we get ahead? Can we, withstand the shocks to our economy in a way that doesn't compromise our kind of quality of life? And I think that, for individuals that are, there's a sort of a band of individuals, a segment of the population that's more and more vulnerable given the current shocks to the economy. And our food system is somewhat vulnerable to that. And don't get me wrong, Canada has a strong food system. I mean, it withstood a lot of the shocks of the global pandemic quite well in comparison to some other countries. Although I would say there's lots of room for improvement.
Yes.
A lot. And part of it is, I think, we need a systems lens. We need to think about how we make that food system more resilient, sustainable, fair, just, affordable. It's all part of a conversation around how can we transform our food system. So, for example, we could have smaller, shorter supply chains that are more resilient. We could invest strategically in kind of the missing middle infrastructure that's often referenced in community-based or regional food systems. That we have a bit more reliance on a more consolidated food system in Canada. Part of that is because of policy. Part of it is over time, the sort of companies that sort of have become to sort of dominate our food system have gained more and more market share and power in that food system. And so part of the challenge and nature of the conversation is, well, how do you transform that food system in a way that doesn't disrupt it so much that you have an unintended adverse consequence? Because what you want to achieve is a steady progress towards a more affordable life for people, and make food more accessible, and make healthy food more available for people. And you really want to, I think, my view is to really focus on those who are the most food insecure in Canada and ensure that they have access. Policies like the Canada Child Benefit did a great job 100%. Of helping target, people who may not have the means. it's means tested,
Yeah,
and
totally.
it gives families hundreds of dollars tax free per month.
That they
It's
need.
indexed to inflation. It's lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of
Yeah,
poverty, and we're very proud of that. That's a liberal government policy. That's a good example. There are many others. The local food infrastructure fund is another good example of
yes,
something which I would argue could be bigger in terms of size. But there are lots of other opportunities in the food system, I think.
absolutely. One thing, and this wearing your member of parliament hat, being in the government,
Yeah.
in Canada, we do have a challenge, and for rightful so, because of the weather, whatever that
Mhm.
is we are not sustainable in having enough food within our borders. We heavily rely on imports from around the world, but a lot coming from down south. Keeping in mind the geopolitical situation currently, and we don't know what tomorrow's got in store, what do you think we can do within the country to be more sustainable?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there's so many aspects that so many threads of that conversation that we could pull on and talk about to make a more sustainable or resilient or self reliant food system. Again, I don't particularly subscribe to a protectionist model in
Hmm.
terms of trade. So, although we're sort of thrusted into an environment right now with the trade war that's going on with the United States, where we really have to reevaluate, and we're looking at doubling our trade with non-U.S. trade partners, and that's a good goal to have. To diversify our trade relationships is going to make us more resilient. Canada, as you know, is an agricultural
Yeah.
superpower. We export. We're a net exporter. But you're right. There's a bit of asymmetry here between what the population needs and what we're exporting around the world. So yeah, we could look at, Rod McRae and I had conversations for years, and he's a brilliant mind
Yes, he
on food
is.
policy at York University. He said, talked a lot about import substitution, things that we could actually produce here in Canada. Um, and I think there's lots of examples of that. I have a good example from BC. I went and visited an organization out there, a company that's run by two brothers that were engineers, and they engineered a vertical grow operation,
Wow.
very sizable. It's over 200,000 square feet, and they are growing microgreens at a scale that I had never seen before. And they're called Up Vertical, I think they're called.
Okay.
Really great company, and they've been able to compete on price to supply Costco in British Columbia with microgreens. Um, so
So
they've
it's a volume.
basically, yeah, so the volume and price
Yeah.
has
To do
out,
Costco.
out outbid or competed against I think California company or a
Wow.
Mexican, I think it's California. So now Costco they are the sole supplier, the only supplier to Costco in all of BC. So those models are interesting. One could argue, well, they're energy intensive, but if they were to integrate renewable energy into their operations, which is, I think, one of their
Yeah.
plans, which I talked to them about, you've now got a model that would be able to grow food indoors at really low costs, like lower than any cost we have today. It
Wow.
would drive the cost down and drive the price down for consumers. Be more climate resilient because if we had a major power outage, they would still run on
Be able to
battery
do that.
power, and they would have renewable energy. So to me, you've got a model there which is really kind of
That's amazing.
disruptive. And I think, yeah,
Yeah.
so, and there's lots of others that I've experienced where, you've got the sort of circular economy closed loop system of aquaculture and agriculture, mix. And, I remember Ripple Farms was doing this where they had retrofitted shipping containers, and they had, fresh tilapia, so that you have
You
that
can do
closed
that.
loop
Yeah.
system. And for me, those models, and don't get me wrong, not all of them are indoors
Of course.
because I don't want to sound like I'm um, not a fan of sort
Outdoors.
of
Yeah.
sustainable agricultural methods. I really am. So, but there are so many good examples of where we can get, you know, more biodiverse farms. We can create shorter supply chains. We can create the infrastructure we need in communities. We can innovate within the food system. We can have businesses that operate with a triple bottom line, that are more social enterprise models. What's interesting about those is they change the dynamics in the food system such that, other businesses now have to start to talk
Absolutely.
about their social and environmental responsibilities. And I've seen that really shift local marketplaces so that there is more of an incentive, a natural reward and incentive in terms of showcasing those practices. And to me, that's what my life has been about. So that's what I want to see across Canada, a lot more of that activity. And I think government obviously has a key role to play there, right?
And then what is also fascinating is, and I've heard the Prime Minister say this a few times now, that it's not only the right thing to do, it's an economically right thing to do. And
Yes.
this is a great example of that.
I agree because, resilience in a supply chain equals an ability to withstand shocks in terms of commodity price changes. Like we have a food system if we have a food system that's over reliant on these commodity prices and international trade relationships, in moments where there's a crisis, those things tend to break down and leave communities more vulnerable. My view is that if we have a sort of macro level food system that operates and we have a more community based food system that operates, we have more resilience because we have the regional community food systems to rely on in moments where that other larger sort of consolidated food system is vulnerable to these economic shocks. And I think that makes us more resilient and more able to withstand all the kinds of things that we see, whether it's a extreme weather event, or it's a pandemic, or it's the supply chain disruptions associated with it, or a trade war, or who knows what's coming next, right? Because the world is a more complex and challenging place. So I think with knowing that we've got to be prepared for that, I think it requires us to really look through a different lens at how we can transform our food system.
Absolutely. Now, I was just chatting with Minister Sirai yesterday about international development.
Okay, yeah.
And it was fascinating to hear that now when we're talking about the world and international development, war, drought, flood.
Yes.
Constantly around wherever you see.
Yeah.
Now, and I know this is not your portfolio at all, but even from the finance perspective, where do you think the next few years look like when it goes to international development and connecting it to food and agriculture and the food security side of it? Do you have any magic wand?
Well, I don't have a magic wand, but I think the cooperation between Canada and other countries and the collective efforts, like I think as we see more and more flood, drought, and rising food insecurity, it's going to put more pressure on all the surrounding countries. Like it's not an isolated issue that one country will feel in itself, because we'll have probably more and we've talked about the idea that the climate crisis is going to push this sort of global migration patterns are going to change. And we see it, like there likely going to be some areas that we can't grow food in. There's going to be other areas, and maybe in northern Canada, we're going to be able to grow food in that we haven't been able to grow food for a long time because of how the climate shifts.
Exactly.
And we're going to really have to adjust, and it's not going to be easy. And we're going to have to do it collectively, because what are we going to do? Just abandon, our sort of global commitments? I don't think so. I think that's going to make matters worse. So I think global cooperation is going to be really key. I think figuring out what Canada can do to help. I think we can be a net exporter of our innovation in the food system, which would be really great to see us take on as a global leadership role. I think Prime Minister Carney is doing a great job of showcasing how you get through a trade war and build a stronger economy.
100%.
Where our economy right now is exceeding expectations on every level, from GDP growth in the third quarter this year that was
Employment.
way beyond expectations, employment numbers, 181,000 new
Exactly.
jobs in 3 months in the middle of a trade war.
Trade war.
It's
Brilliant.
incredible.
Brilliant.
And I think he's a great leader to understand the economic impacts of these sort of challenges that our country faces, but also understanding the opportunities it presents for us to demonstrate leadership at a global level, which I think we're doing.
Absolutely. And I don't think it is either or.
No.
It is all together, because you help the international side of it, it helps domestically, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, we learned this the hard way in the pandemic, right? With all the variants and strains
Yes.
of COVID-19, which we really had to approach it internationally and work together if we were going to really get through it at a global level, because these problems are not isolated to
100%.
within borders; they cross all kinds of borders, and that's what makes them complex issues.
100%.
It also what makes them important moments for us to work together.
As we coming to a wrap up of this conversation, there's a few questions that I'm going to ask. And so, if there is one message you want to give to the youth of Canada who is either pursuing international development or pursuing food security, what is that one message you want to tell them?
Yeah, I think for me, what is the most inspiring about food systems work is this feeling of agency in the food system, like understanding that we're all actors in our food system, and we can make small changes. But when we work collectively, we can aggregate those changes and advocate for policies that can really, really impact the system. And that to me is exciting, right? And there's lots of creative moments within a food system where you can figure out, I went to Carleton University, we started the garden spot with just having some local food available for free. We cooked it and with friends, and we just offered free food to people, and it was the most fulfilling thing. And I have all these fond memories of fighting the administration for how we had the right to do this, to feed ourselves. And it's such a simple
Such a simple thing,
but
exactly.
it was so inspiring to do it. It made me feel good, like I felt good about doing it. It was a collective action thing. It shifted policy. It gathered so much momentum on campus at Carleton University, and I didn't lead it. It was friends of mine that did it, but it was really
You're part of it.
it was great to be a part of something like
Exactly.
that. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for collective action within our food system.
I think that's a great advice. Now, you do a lot of these kind of interviews. What is that thing that you're not asked enough that you really want to talk about?
I think there's a justice issue in our food system that it doesn't feel like we're talking about enough today. So, like, what is a just food system? Like, if we were designing a food system that was truly just, what would that look like? And I think that that's a question we need to really, really challenge ourselves with, because I think it challenges a lot of the ways our current food system operates. And I think for me, that's an area that I would love to do a deeper dive in. The other thing that has really bothered me for a long time that I think we need to do more work on, which I'm very committed to, is figuring out how we get a whole new generation of farmers to farm at a more, using permacultural methods and give them access to financing and land and the skills that they need so they can be the next generation of farmers, but that they do it with a different lens, a different set of values that is, even more socially and don't get me wrong, farmers are always environmentally and socially they're great stewards of the land. So I'm not demonizing anybody. I just know that the young people I've talked to want to do things differently, and they're excited about permaculture and agroecology and, solving some of our social problems and making sure people are fed with healthy, nutrient dense food. That excites me to no end. It's not very easy for those folks to get started today. And I would
100%.
like us to make it a lot easier to have a renaissance of small scale farming in this country, because I think we have the most viable, arable,
Land.
nutrient
Yeah.
rich land. And if we just take care of our soils and
100%.
really embrace the biodiverse farm model, I think we can really shift the food system
Especially
from the ground up.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially around the riding that you represent. There is lots in that area as well.
Yeah, well, Durham region is definitely growing things, and I think there's opportunities to do a lot more agroecology.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Time just flew by, and
Love
I
talking
could
to you.
sit and talk for another few hours.
I think I could too. This has been great. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot
Thanks
for
for
your
your
time.
work and your leadership. It's really great to be a part of a conversation with you, and look forward to future work together.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks,
And it's a pleasure. And thank you for listening in. Well, what do you think of this conversation? Wow. How much depth of knowledge Ryan has about the issues that's governing our country, our world, starting from school food to food security, sustainable development, poverty. He has answers to so much. And I wish that our not only our member of parliament in Canada, but around the world, politicians are listening and seeing what can be done and what our current government in Canada is doing. Until next week, thank you so much for joining. If you're not following us, please do so, the Zero Hunger Project, and there are more episodes coming your way.